What if I told you that some of the things we do after 70, the words we speak, the habits we form, even the stories we choose to tell, might be quietly changing how others see us and how we see ourselves? It happens slowly, subtly, and with the best of intentions. You're catching up with an old friend or talking to a grandchild, and before you know it, you're deep into a rundown of doctor's appointments, swollen joints, and blood pressure readings. Nothing wrong with that, right? It's life. But here's the question. When did our conversations start sounding more like medical charts than memories? See, this isn't just about growing older. It's about something deeper, something many of us don't even realize is happening. Because while we're sharing what hurts, what's changed, what's harder now, sometimes, without knowing it, we begin to let illness steal the spotlight. We stop being us, the storyteller, the spark, the spirit, and start becoming the symptoms we talk about. And here's the tricky part. The people around us, they notice, but they won't always say it. They'll smile, nod, listen patiently. But inside, they're wondering, where did the person go who used to make me laugh, who told the best stories, who lit up the room just by being in it? This isn't about blame. It's about awareness. Because the truth is, aging doesn't just change your body. It changes your relationships, if you let it. So in this video, we're shining a light on some of the hidden habits that may be pulling you away from connection, without you even realizing it. And we're doing it with care, not to criticize, but to empower. Because you are still so much more than your diagnosis, your aches, or your daily routine, your story, a presence, a person people still want to be close to, if you give them the chance. Let's begin with one of the most common habits of all, the one that creeps in quietly and yet changes everything when every conversation starts to feel like a doctor's visit. Number 1. When every conversation becomes a doctor's visit. There's no denying that growing older brings changes, aches, appointments, and new prescriptions, and it's natural to talk about it. After all, it's part of life now. But sometimes, without realizing it, our conversations begin to sound less like heart-to-hearts and more like health reports. You catch up with a friend or a grandchild, and before long, you're talking about your cholesterol numbers, the swelling in your knee, or the medication that made you dizzy last week. Again. And here's the thing, people care deeply. But when every conversation starts and ends with symptoms, it slowly shifts the relationship. You stop being a source of connection and start feeling like a case file. It's not intentional. It's just what happens when illness becomes the leading character in your story. Especially for younger folks, these health updates can feel heavy, not because they don't want to help, but because they don't know how. They listen, nod, try to offer comfort, but inside, they're wishing for one thing, to see the light in you again, the part that tells stories, laughs at old memories, shares hopes, even if they're small. Here's a gentle truth. You are so much more than your diagnosis. You are the smile that lights up a kitchen, the hands that baked, built, wrote, or held. You are wisdom, humor, spirit, and soul. Your body may need more care these days, but don't let it steal the stage. So yes, share how you're feeling, but also share what you're curious about. Ask someone how their day went. Talk about the sunrise, a recipe you're trying, or that neighbor who always waves with 2 hands. When you shift the spotlight from your pain to your presence, people lean in again. They remember why they love being around you. And perhaps most importantly, you'll feel more like yourself. Because healing doesn't only happen with medicine, it happens with laughter, with purpose, with stories and songs, and that glint in your eye that says, I'm still here, and I've still got something beautiful to share. Number 2. Holding on too tightly to the old ways. One of the quiet shifts that can happen as we get older is this. Our beliefs, the ones that once guided us, start feeling more like anchors than lanterns. They used to light our way, but now, sometimes, they just keep us planted in place. You might not notice it at first. It sounds like, well, that's just the way it is, or people today are too sensitive. Maybe even, we didn't need all this back in my day. But here's the truth. The world isn't standing still. The way people think, love, communicate, it's all moving forward. And when we refuse to even entertain a different perspective, it doesn't make us look wise. It makes us look unwilling. The young people around you, they see it. They probably won't argue. They might smile, nod, even change the subject. But deep down, they take note. They file it away. Grandpa doesn't get it. I can't talk to Auntie about that. And that's where real connection quietly fades. But here's what's powerful. Curiosity changes everything. Being open doesn't mean abandoning your values. It just means leaving a little space for growth. Saying, tell me more about why that matters to you. Even when it feels unfamiliar. Letting someone explain instead of shutting the door with, that's nonsense. Because often, that resistance, it's not stubbornness, it's fear. Fear of being irrelevant. Fear of losing identity. Fear of being wrong after so many years of being sure. But the truth is, relevance doesn't come from being right. It comes from being reachable. You don't have to agree with everything. But when you stay open, when you choose curiosity over judgment, you stay connected. And in doing that, you become someone people trust, not just for what you've done in the past, but for the space you still hold in the present. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's wisdom that breathes. Number 3, moving without mindfulness. As we get older, our pace naturally shifts. The steps get slower, the footing more careful, and sometimes we stop more often just to think or catch our breath. And that's completely okay. It's human. But what isn't always talked about is how, with that slower rhythm, we can unintentionally start moving through the world with less spatial awareness. You've likely seen it, or maybe even done it yourself without noticing. Stopping subtly in a crowded hallway, parking a cart sideways in a store aisle while deciding between 2 brands, or walking in a group and slowly drifting across the entire sidewalk. These moments seem small, and they are, but they quietly affect the flow of people around you. Now, no one's expecting you to move like you're in a hurry, but what people do hope for, even if they never say it, is awareness. Awareness that this hallway, this sidewalk, this grocery store lane, it's shared, that they're also trying to get somewhere, too. The hard truth is, most folks won't say a word. They'll just navigate around you with a sigh or a forced smile. But over time, those little sighs turn into silent stories about who you are. They're always in the way, or it's just easier to go without them, not because of dislike, but because your presence starts to feel like something they have to manage. But here's the beautiful thing. You don't have to move faster to change that story. You just have to move more consciously. Number 4. When humor stops connecting. Laughter is one of life's greatest gifts. It softens hard moments, builds bridges across generations, and reminds us not to take everything so seriously. But just like music or fashion, humor evolves with time, and sometimes we forget to update our playbook. Maybe you've told the same jokes for years. Maybe they always used to get a chuckle at the dinner table or during work breaks. But lately, you notice people smiling less, looking away, or changing the subject. You wonder what changed. Here's the truth. It's not that humor is no longer welcome. It's that the world has become more aware of how certain jokes land. A remark that pokes fun at someone's appearance, background, identity, or struggles might have once passed as just teasing, but today, those same lines can feel more like a jab than a joke. Younger people, especially, live in a world that values empathy. They've been raised in a culture that teaches sensitivity to differences, respect for boundaries, and the power of inclusive language. When humor crosses those lines, even unintentionally, it can make them pull back, not because they don't like you, but because they don't feel safe to be fully themselves. Now, that doesn't mean you have to tiptoe around every word. It doesn't mean being afraid to laugh, but it does mean adjusting your compass. The best kind of humor is timeless because it's thoughtful. It makes people feel lighter, not targeted. It brings people together, not puts them down. The good news, you don't have to lose your sense of fun to stay relevant. If anything, self-aware humor, especially the kind that pokes fun at yourself, shows a deep wisdom. It says, I'm human, I'm learning, and I'm not above laughing at my own quirks. When you can do that, something powerful happens. People drop their guard, they lean in, They see you not as the older one who doesn't get it, but as someone who still knows how to read the room and lift the mood. Because in the end, humor isn't about being the funniest person in the room. It's about making others feel good while you're there. And that kind of laughter never goes out of style. Number 5. Pretending you can't when you actually can. Getting older brings a lot of changes, some welcome, some more difficult. It's true that certain tasks take longer, feel heavier, or come with more risk than they used to. But there's a fine line between asking for help because you need it and leaning on others simply because it's easier. Sometimes it starts subtly. You say, "Oh, I don't know how to use that thing," or "You're faster at this anyway." And yes, in the moment, those little comments seem harmless. But when they become your default, they can send the wrong message, not just about your abilities, but about your mindset. And over time, people pick up on it. They might not say it out loud, but it begins to weigh on them. Loved ones start feeling like they're being depended on for everything, when in reality, you're still capable of doing quite a bit. They begin to wonder, is this about ability or avoidance? Now, let's be clear. Needing help is not a weakness. Everyone needs support sometimes, regardless of age, but acting helpless when you're not, that can slowly chip away at trust. It makes people feel used, even if unintentionally. And what's more, it chips away at your own sense of power. Because, here's the truth, people admire effort. Your family and friends don't expect perfection. They're not looking for speed or mastery. What they love is seeing you engaged, trying, participating. They love seeing you say, "I'll give it a shot, even if it takes a few tries." That kind of spirit inspires them more than you know. Reclaiming small moments of independence, like figuring out the microwave settings, carrying your own groceries, or learning something new on your phone, isn't about pride. It's about presence. It's a quiet but powerful way of saying, "I'm still here. I still choose to live fully." And the beautiful part, when you do ask for help, it carries more weight. It's not out of habit. It's out of honesty. And people respond to that with true care, not silent frustration. Because aging gracefully isn't about doing everything alone. It's about knowing when to lean in and when to rise up and say, "Let me try this one myself." Number 6. Needing to be right all the time. There's something deeply comforting about experience. After decades of living, we've seen the cycles of life, learned tough lessons, and figured out what works for us. And that knowledge, it's valuable. It really is. But sometimes, without realizing it, we hold on to our need to be right so tightly that we miss the bigger opportunity, connection. Maybe it's correcting a family member mid-story, or insisting that your way of folding laundry or balancing a budget is still the gold standard. Maybe it's brushing off someone's new idea with a simple, "That's not how it works," or "You'll understand one day." At first, people may smile and let it slide, but over time, that energy starts to feel heavy. Conversations shrink, people share less, and it's not because they don't care. It's because they feel like there's no room for their ideas, their way, their voice. And here's the thing. Most elders who fall into this habit aren't trying to be controlling. They're trying to stay relevant in a world that often moves fast and forgets slow wisdom. The need to be right becomes a way to prove they still matter. But ironically, it does the opposite. It pushes people away. The truth is, wisdom doesn't need to win. It doesn't need to interrupt. It doesn't need to prove. It listens. It considers. It asks, "What do you think?" It creates space for dialogue, not dominance. And that's the version of you people love the most. Not the one who corrects, but the one who engages. Not the one who always has an answer, but the one who can say, "That's an interesting way to see it." That's what earns you trust. That's what makes your words feel valuable instead of heavy. So, here's a small but powerful shift. Let go of being right and choose being present. You'll be amazed how much people open up, how often they seek your advice, how warmly they respond when they know they're not being lectured, but being invited in. Because in the end, it's not how many times you were right that people remember. It's how often you made them feel heard. Final reflections. Growing with grace. Now that we've explored these 6 behaviors, take a breath. This isn't a test. It's a moment to pause and ask yourself, what am I carrying that no longer serves me? What am I ready to release gently, honestly, and without shame? This conversation wasn't meant to scold or point fingers. It's an offering, a chance to become more conscious of the habits that might quietly distance you from the people you love, the ones who admire you, and even the strangers who crossed your path. Because here's the truth. None of these behaviors make you less worthy. They're just signs, markers of where a little more intention, a little more love could bring you closer to others and back to yourself. Getting older doesn't mean we stop growing. In fact, some of our deepest growth happens later in life, not in leaps, but in gentle shifts, in realizing that how we show up still matters, in recognizing that we still have power, not to control others, but to influence the space we take up with grace. So as you move forward, don't think in terms of fixing yourself. Think in terms of refining, adjusting, softening the edges that time and habit may have hardened. Whether it's listening more, speaking with care, or simply choosing to move with more awareness, these small choices ripple far. And here's the beautiful part. The people around you feel the change, even if they never say it. They notice, they lean in, they smile more. They start seeing not just the years in your face, but the warmth in your presence. That's your legacy, not just what you've done, but how you continue to be. So if this video stirred something in you, write it down, share it with someone, leave a comment, and let us know one habit you're ready to shift, or one insight that opened your eyes. Thank you for taking this time with us. If you found value in this message, like and subscribe, and help us continue creating a space where wisdom doesn't grow old, it grows deeper. We'll see you in the next one.